Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 9, Episode 116. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for tuning in this Tuesday, Steelers Nation. Hopefully you had a enjoyable and safe Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully you're staying safe from the storms out there. Unfortunately, any Steeler fans out in central Ohio took a really big hit from some nasty tornadoes, so hopefully everybody rode out the storm and is okay. But Dave, how are you doing? How was your Memorial Day weekend?
Nice and quiet, but I did eat some things that I probably didn't need to be eaten. I'm kind
that applies for most shows.
Yeah, I got to be a little bit more careful this week. I think coming off vacation and coming off of a holiday weekend where I fed my face with some things I probably didn't need to feed my face with. But
all deserved.
Yeah, I think that. But when you get my age, it's harder to. I don't have that uber metabolism that young fellas like you have. Boy, I was a 28-inch waist for quite a while, and all of a sudden it got away from me there when I was your age. So you better be careful with those bagel bites, pizza bagel bites that you like to eat all the time. But
I swore off that stuff a long time ago because it's good, but it's just salt and salt.
Well, good for you, and you don't smoke, and I don't think you drink either. So you're probably gonna live to be 120.
No, I'm gonna probably die when I'm 70, and somehow I should have enjoyed life a whole lot more. When I'm the one that's going to live to 140.
I damn sure got my money's worth, I'll tell you that.
You might be on borrowed time.
Absolutely. But hey, here we are, second week of OTAs already. Where's the time gone? Seems like Super Bowl just took place, and we were gearing up for the Senior Bowl, and then the Combine, and by the way, what I guess as good a place as any to start with not a lot going on right now. The Combine just recently, I guess at the owners' meetings or whatnot, or league meetings or whatever you want to call them, they announced that there's going to be a slight change in the NFL Combine. I guess the order of events and when they do them, and for the life of me, I can't understand why they are moving some of this stuff around.
Yeah, I think the highlight here is that the on-field workouts, which are usually held, kicks off 9 a.m., runs through early afternoon, is now going to be moved to prime time, obviously in a ratings grab, because that's the biggest thing. Now, my question is everything else getting pushed back, or are these guys still going to have to wake up at 5 a.m. like they have been in the past to begin the day? And if it's that they're still waking up early, then this is just a ridiculous move, and it's only going to hurt the players. And even if everything is pushed back, this is obviously still just a ratings grab and trying to make as much money as possible. And that's not where the focus needs to be for the Combine. It's got to be on the players. How do we maximize their weekend and let them put their best foot forward to help the draft stock?
I guess they would just move some meetings. Let's see, when did I guess the meetings would take place earlier in the day then, huh?
Yeah, because usually, I mean, I don't know exactly how it goes. Meetings take place throughout, they're there for 3-4 days, but usually they'll happen after maybe some of the on-field workouts. They happen later at night. I think they've gone as late as 11 o'clock, which probably isn't helpful either. So, but I worry, I mean, there's medical testing, there's psychological testing, and all that stuff usually happens in the morning. It's usually one of the first things, and there's the fun, 4 a.m. drug test that you get woken up for. So I'm still, and maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is still have to probably wake up early for all these events, and they're going to have to go through the entire day and then finish with the workouts. And I just don't see that being helpful for the players.
You and I obviously religiously watch. I know a lot of people out there do, but maybe they're not getting the share of television viewers as maybe they think. Look, I mean, you got to be a diehard to sit there and watch, as much as we do there. But I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, that football is our life, and that's what we do, and you and I have done, or I've done it specifically for, how long now? 10 years, I guess, 8, 9, 10 years, and you've been on board 5 or 6, I guess, already, and they're every time, with me updating those spreadsheets in real time. But, I'm not a fan of fixing things that aren't broken, and to me it seems like this is certainly a case of that.
Yeah, of all the things that you could fix for the combine, I don't think moving events to prime time was at the top of anyone's list. But that's what it is, and again, I'll have to wait and see exactly how the whole schedule works. Maybe they can make this in a way and draw up the schedule to make it beneficial for the players, but I've yet to see that, so I'm always going to be skeptical of that. But to go to the Steelers, as you mentioned, Dave, in OTAs, probably got to learn less and less. The first week you got Ben talking, you got the players that you haven't heard from in a while. I'm sure those will speak to the media, but you probably learn a little bit less, and there's not as much to note. So I don't know exactly what you want to start with, but I think, in that vein of going to 2019 projections and talking about the upcoming season, Mike Clay had an interesting article, and Mike Clay is, let me get his title here, on Twitter, ESPN, I believe is what he works for, did a 2019 Steelers projections. And Dave, I think maybe you took more issue to it than I did, but what were your problems with his projections?
Yeah, first, before I forget, the Raiders are signing Richie Incognito.
Oh, get him on Hard Knocks.
Oh, Lord,
yeah.
man. I get it. And we should already know, last year, a year ago, we already knew who, that the Browns were going to be on Hard Knocks. So you would think at any time now it's going to be announced which team is going to be on Hard Knocks. And I think the odds favorites were down to the Redskins and the Raiders. I mean, who the heck cares about the Redskins right now? I mean, I know they got the quarterback situation and a few other things to monitor there. And, of course, one of the Grudens being on the hot seat. But, man, if HBO doesn't lock in the Raiders, I mean, they are missing a golden opportunity here, because you have Antonio Brown obviously over there, Vontaze Burfict, and now Richie Incognito, and of course you've got the Angel over there in Cleveland. What's Cleveland's? I already forgot Cleveland.
Farrell. How dare you forget Cleveland Farrell? We love that guy.
Yeah, I already forget Cleveland's last name there. Over there as well too, and of course Carr and Gruden and Mike Mayock. I mean, it has the makings to be an all-time great, Hard Knock series. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets announced today or if they wait until Friday again. But, man, I'm keeping my fingers crossed for it to be the Raiders, because, look, I'll watch it anyway. I watch Hard Knocks every year. It's kind of a signal that the season's coming, and it gives you something to look forward to during the preseason as well, too, there. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But I found that interesting that, they're signing Richie Incognito this morning.
Yeah, it definitely seems counter to the whole character foundational guys that Mayock and Gruden talked about building through the draft. That's why they took someone like Khalil Farrell and Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Abram in the first round and got some criticism for it. But they said, we got to build foundational character guys, and you go and sign Richie Incognito. But anyway, so that's the warm-up, a little mini rant, I guess, Dave, because I think you had some issues with Mike Clay's projections, and I don't know exactly how he made these projections. I assume they were somehow algorithm. I'm sure it wasn't made up by hand. But what did you take away from it?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy to go across the league and try to make, which he's done, gone across the league and make projections, and he obviously he works now. Didn't he used to work for Football Guys?
Yeah, he's moved around. I think I've met him, actually. He's a good guy down at the Senior Bowl. But it says ESPN. I don't know exactly what he's doing right now.
Yeah, but he's obviously done this for a while, and he's probably got a system to it. And look, it's hard to hold someone's hand to the fire, this early in the off season here. But yeah, I did the things that stuck out to me first, and we'll go over some of the things that are kind of on proliferary after that, though. But him having the Steelers with 43 sacks and 11 interceptions, I think, was one of the first things that stuck out to me. Now, if the Steelers only record 43 sacks and 11 interceptions, now obviously I don't think he has the forced fumbles down here and all, but I mean, how many of those is he realistically going to predict for a team to have anyway? 5, 6 or whatnot. I mean, technically he's got this team having the same amount of defensive turnovers as they did last year, which I think was 15, and he has them with less sacks. And if that's the case, if those numbers wind up being true, it's not going to be a good year for the Steelers defense.
I gotta believe the interceptions. I mean, ideally you wanted higher. You mentioned on the last show, 15 this year is kind of the target, and I agree. But 11
at minimum. At
minimum. Now, hopefully the sacks are a little bit higher, but maybe at some point it does regress kind of a little bit more to the mean. I mean, it's hard to imagine they're going to be 50 sacks every single year. But yeah, I would put that 43 into the high 40s probably at minimum.
Yeah, and like I said, it's hard. It's hard to predict interceptions, obviously, and I think a lot of this probably has to do going off of last year's actual numbers and all like that. But and where did he miss out on the sacks? I think maybe it's with Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and Javon Hargrave. He's got the three of those totaling up to, it looks like 7, 8. 15 total. I think it'll be disappointing if those three players combine for just 15 overall sacks.
How about Watt at 9.8? I mean, Watt had 13 last year. He played his best football at the end of the season. So if he doesn't hit double digits comfortably, it'll be kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, I that too. And Devin Bush, look, if there's one thing that Devin Bush did good in college other than playing sideline to sideline, it was getting after the quarterback, right?
Yeah, the inside linebacker numbers are low because they're going to blitz those guys a ton and they're going to make some plays.
And I just recently, I'm hearing a little bit of echo there, but I don't know why. But you got me okay, Alex?
Yeah, do you hear me okay?
Yeah, I just having a little bit of echo there. But anyway, Vince Williams, I just broke down on what is today? Tuesday. On Monday, went over the what was it, 5.5 sacks that Vince Williams had posted during the 2018 season. And look, if there's one thing that the Steelers have been seemingly good at the last couple of years, it's been blitzing Vince Williams at the right times and getting him one-on-one with running backs. And I mean, if you want a mismatch, that's a mismatch right there. Mm-hmm. And obviously his sacks last year were down from the year prior to that. But I mean, that's okay in my opinion. But when you have a guy like Bush coming in who, face it, sooner rather than later, he's going to be on that field, and he's going to be getting after the quarterback along with Vince Williams. So yeah, I think in total, Clay has the inside linebackers having 5 sacks. I think that's low. You hit on look. I mean, if Bud Dupree can hit 6.3 sacks, hallelujah.
That's basically what he's done throughout his career. Right. He's been kind of a 5 to 6 sack kind of guy.
Right. So I mean, if he gets more than that, God bless him. But T.J. Watt, I mean, you would hope. Now I will say this: when you look at the overall quality of T.J. Watt's sacks since coming into the league, they haven't been fantastic. So maybe they regress a little bit because of not being overall high quality. But on the flip side, you expect guys like Hayward, Tuitt, and Hargrave to combine for a little bit more than 15, I think there. So he's got 1 from let's see, cornerbacks. He's got a total of 1, and the safeties he has a total of 2. I guess that's about right there. But the thing, like I said, that stuck out overall to me is the total amount of sacks, 43. Look, I'm okay if he wants to take them sacks down to 43, but put them interceptions up there about 18 or 19.
Well, I guess if the sacks are coming down, it's hard to justify the interceptions being too high. I mean, because we know in theory, it always isn't in practice for Pittsburgh, but in theory, when you have more sacks, you have more picks. When you have less sacks, you have fewer picks.
But there you go. That was defensively. Now, when you look at the snap totals overall, too, I mean, he's got a Denier playing just 31 total snaps. Surely we'll see a Denier play more than 31, right?
If he makes the team, I mean, he's not a lock, so he's got to jump chick, and that's not a guarantee.
Right, but he's a virtual lock, and I mean,
you think it's a virtual lock?
A Denier?
Yeah,
I think he is at this point.
Oh, What do you mean by virtual lock? What are his odds of making the 53 in a percentage?
I'd say 80.
That's virtual lock.
To me, I would take 80% if someone told me I have an 80% chance. I mean, maybe a little bit higher than that.
I wouldn't call it a lock though, especially at 80%.
Who's going to beat him out? I mean, I guess it means you drafted Sutton Smith, and Sutton Smith will be a better special teams player than a Denier.
Yeah, I mean, here's my question: if Chicolo becomes the number 3 or stays as number 3, what is a Denier's role on this team? Wait for someone to get hurt. Because he can't play special teams.
I think he's the guy that's got to see some rotational snaps at some point.
I hope so, but they're pretty.
And if he can't beat out Chicolo by the start of the season too, that'll be disappointing in my opinion.
It will be, yeah. I mean, I want a Denier to be the number 3. I want Chick to be the number 4. I can put a Denier in that rotational role, and Chick becomes the core special teamer and really good depth as a number 4 guy. But it's not a guarantee to happen. Not in my mind.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, if he does make the team, then you're saying that 31 snaps is low.
Yeah, if he does make the team, I think it's low. But again,
That's basically what I'm getting at there.
yeah,
Is that snap count, too low in my opinion.
right.
If he does make the roster. Looking at the rest of it there, he's got Tyler Matakevich making the roster and playing 102 snaps. Lord knows, here's hoping that doesn't happen. I mean, hey, look, he can make the roster as a special teams player, but something's gone a little bit haywire there if he has to play 102 snaps. And the same goes for Ulysses Gilbert III. Look, I have no issue with Ulysses Gilbert III making the 53, but there's absolutely no reason unless Steelers are involved in several blowouts here. But even then, some of these games are going to be difficult for him probably to get a helmet. 81 snaps for Ulysses Gilbert III is, in my opinion, way too high. His cornerbacks, he's got 4 of them receiving snap times, and he's got Justin Lane playing 203 snaps. And for the life of me, I cannot come up with other than injuries a way for Justin Lane to play 203 snaps.
I agree. There's no path, but an injury is likely to happen to somebody, right? So, I mean, he probably will end up playing 200 snaps this year because someone's going to get hurt.
Well, then you're predicting injuries there, and God bless you if you can do that.
Well, I mean, I think anytime you do that model, you probably assume somebody gets hurt because I don't know. I think that's fair to say, but I mean that is how it goes. I mean, if Hayden or Nelson goes down, Lane's probably going to be next man up, correct?
I'm not so sure of that. We'll see what happens here with Artie Burns. I mean, obviously,
Man, you are on that Artie Burns train.
I'm not on the train.
You're in the sidecar or something.
I'm just to the point yet that I'm not 100% fully convinced that he's not going to make this team.
But I disagree. But also, even if he does make the team, is he going to be next man up? Is he going to get to that point?
I would think so, because if he can't make the team as the next man up, then he does probably need to be cut.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who, just to hear Colbert and Tomlin talk so far this offseason, it obviously doesn't sound like they want Lane to play much, if any, this season. That's understandable, but injuries do happen there, and maybe at some point he does see time later on in the season there. I look at that 203 number, and that just seems way too high, even with an injury or two,
Yeah, I mean, somebody would have to probably miss, what do you think, 2-3 weeks to get around that number? So it would take a little bit of an injury.
You're talking 66 snaps a game on average, right?
Yeah, so about 3 games is right around 200.
Yeah, and how's that going to go? I mean, you get him on the, is it going to be sooner rather than later, or later rather than sooner? But anyway, that stuck out to me. And the other one that stuck out to me with a high snap count too is Jordan Dangerfield. And look, I know we've given Dangerfield zero respect the last few years, but I mean, has he even hit 200 snaps in a season since he's been around?
He was close in 2016 when he made a couple starts. I think he was in like the 160 range. I mean, he is the backup free safety today, like it or not. And if Javis goes down, I assume Danger's next man up. So kind of similar situation as to Lane. It's funny they have the same snap count projection at 203. If Davis goes down, Dangerfield's going to play a lot.
But those two things stuck out to me a bunch.
The thing that stuck out to me a lot was, why is Marcus Allen at 102 snaps? The Steelers not playing a dime defense this year. 102 and 9 tackles from Marcus Allen. The Steelers, I think, have a very different projection of Marcus Allen's role in 2019.
Yeah, and then, absolutely. And, he's only got 8 total defensive backs in there. He obviously does not think Artie Burns is going to make the roster and see any snaps there. So he does have 9 total linebackers there, and he's got 5 total defensive linemen seeing snaps there. Obviously, they're going to keep 6 total defensive linemen there. So that, look, like I said, it's hard to do these things. I definitely would not have given Tyler Matakevich 100 snaps. Gilbert, you could give some of those to Marcus Allen, right?
Yeah, really, it should be. And Mark Barron even feels a little low at like 250.
Yeah, that does seem way low. I mean, you're paying him that kind of money to play that few snaps there. And then, like I said, with Lane and Dangerfield and their snap count. Now, switching over to the offensive side of the ball, I kind of have less issues here, but I still have some that I think worth discussing. First and foremost, I guess it's obvious that Mike Clay does not view Mason Rudolph as being a threat to Joshua Dobbs.
And I feel like the whole league has forgotten about Mason Rudolph being drafted last year. I remember during the draft, I think it was day 3 on ESPN or NFL Network, they were talking about quarterbacks getting drafted and heir apparents, and they were talking about the Steelers, and it took them literally like a minute in the conversation for someone to mention Mason Rudolph. So still has Dobbs as the backup.
Obviously, if we get to week 1 and Mason Rudolph is not the backup to Ben Roethlisberger, there should be a lot of disappointed Steeler fans out there. And
But it won't be given to him. I mean, he's got to earn it, obviously.
He's got to earn it. But yeah, I mean, it'll be disappointing all the way around.
No, I agree. It would be.
You look at the running back situation there. I think he's given James Conner a few too many carries there. I mean, not bad. I mean, he's got him right around 1,500 total yards from scrimmage, which I suppose he could hit that. I would where are you right now on James Conner and 1,500 total yards? Over or under?
I'm probably going to take the under. I agree. I think they have Connor at 261 carries. Man, that's not necessarily Le'Veon Bell's 300 plus, but I think it's probably going to be a little bit more of a split between Connor and Samuels. So I agree. You probably want to take Connor down to right around maybe the we did the 230 over under the other day, didn't we? A couple podcasts back. I think I put him around 240 carries this year.
Yeah, I would put him. 230 maybe at the high side there with him. As far as carries go, I mean he's got him with 59 receptions, and he's got him with over 300 touches, and that just feels a little bit high to me.
I agree.
He's only got, he's got Samuels with roughly 100 touches. Yeah, I mean, that could stand to be maybe a tad higher, and he's got Benny Snell with 28 and 2. He's got him with 30 total touches. I think that could be maybe a tad high, maybe around 50.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to figure out this projection. Obviously, health is going to have such a huge bearing on this thing, and in this scenario, basically everybody stays healthy in this projection. But I could see Snell's definitely work as that short yardage and steal away a couple of touchdowns from Connor.
When you look at the quarterbacks real quick with Roethlisberger, he's got him with another 16 interceptions. That's not going to bode well again if Roethlisberger hits the 16 INT mark. He's got him with, I guess, a few less attempts. I would be fine if Roethlisberger attempts go down back below 600. Yeah. And his yards back around. I mean, I guess 4,700 is not awful. Between 4,500 and 4,700 yards seems to be like the perfect wheelhouse for Roethlisberger. That would probably mean that he's hadn't had to navigate a lot of long fields like he did last year, and that maybe he's not having to throw as much in the fourth quarters of some games on top of it there. So I think those numbers are a little high all the way around, maybe even in touchdowns too, 29 touchdowns. But boy, that 16 interceptions just pops out at you real quick, because 16 interceptions would probably be close to leading the league again, right?
Yeah, it would be up there. I mean, I guess you have to look at the percentage because the attempts are still pretty high, but I think the interception numbers do come down a little bit, and that sack number is a little bit high too, as in for 26 sacks, which I think would be the most in several years. So maybe not as confident in the Eagles' offensive line as you and I are.
And I wrote about this just yesterday again, and wanted to jog people's memories again. Remember, Roethlisberger last year was really the king of the dink and dunk passes. A lot of people don't realize that. Go back and read that article that I'd linked to in that post in which Kurt Warner broke down the top 5 quarterbacks ahead of the 2019 season. He kind of led the league in dink and dunk passes, and also led the league in or right there close to it in getting the ball out quick.
Didn't he lead the league in getting the ball out, or was he not first?
I linked to
I thought he was first.
I have to go back and look what I wrote here real quick here on that. I mean, I remember he was right there at the top in the dink and the dunk and all. And
I mean, obviously because they threw more screens than anybody else last year, which does help the numbers. I'd be curious what Ben's numbers are on non-screen plays, unless it's already divided like that. But I thought he was like 2.3 3 seconds or
2.38. Here's what it
Yeah.
was from Pro Football Focus, and I just clicked on the article that I wrote. Boy, it's amazing. You write some of this stuff and you forget that you write it. This was back in February 5th when I wrote this article. Roethlisberger posted fastest average time to throw stat in 2018, and this all stems off of Pro Football Focus numbers. Roethlisberger's average time to throw of 2.38 seconds in 2018 was the fastest of any NFL quarterback in the regular season. When you consider that he threw 600 something times, too. I mean, that's quite a number there. So yeah, not only did he get the ball out quick, and let me click back on my other article here. He was the most throws of 5 yards or less on top of it, and that was came courtesy of the ESPN NFL matchup stats from back in, when did I write that article? January the 3rd of this year's as well too. Now I had a feeling that once we got to Roethlisberger, we'd kind of shift course here on this. But areas where Roethlisberger, I think, needs to improve in 2019 was his downfield deep ball accuracy, and that really hasn't been, what it's been in the last few seasons here. So, balls 20 or more yards down the field. Now, last year he had a better second half of the season than he had. Remember how many of those deep throws he missed early on in the season for one reason or the other? Either they were out of bounds, just too far, or what have you. His accuracy was off.
Bad Wi-Fi.
Right, the bad Wi-Fi and all like that, and obviously wasn't connecting with James Washington down the field and all like that. So his deep ball accuracy needs to get better in 2019. I'm fine with kind of playing the same kind of dink and dunk game, because really, I mean, that's it's become more of a sideline game anyway, right? Quick kind of hitches and that kind of stuff there. So as far as him getting the football out quickly and throwing shorter, I'm fine with that to some degree. And let me tell you, if he's doing that and he increases his accuracy with his balls back down the field again like he did several years ago, that's just going to make everything, the whole part of the offense even better, because they become a much tougher offense to defend when they do have those deep threats on top of it there. And obviously you're not going to have AAB in that offense this year. And I think the other thing, and this seems to be something that we've been talking about a little bit or quite a bit, it seems like every year for the last 3 or 4 years. Why in the hell don't they use play action more?
Yeah, I mean, they're the least in the league when it comes to play action, and I couldn't tell you a great reason other than Ben losing some mobility, and maybe he just likes to keep his eyes on downfield instead of turning his back to it.
Why hasn't that question been asked specifically of Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I think he would just give a non-answer answer.
Well, I mean, at least give him a chance to get the non-answer.
Sure.
Right?
No, I'd love to know. I mean, or ask Fietner. I'd be really interested in the Fietners. Why don't they? Because they do run it. It's effective when they do it, but they run it so little that you think they would run it a little bit more often.
And that's the thing that you just hit on there, is when Roethlisberger has used play action in the past, it's been great. I wasn't even the Grimble pass last year off of the one that he fumbled at the goal line. Wasn't that even play action?
Oh, I knew the one you were talking about. When it's Grimble, here's one play we're referencing. Yeah, no, it was like 4th and inches. So yeah, I think it was play action. They just not under center that often. I don't know exactly where they rank in terms of plays under center, but I think that's one reason why. It's because they're rarely under center. Yeah, I shouldn't say rarely, but they're not often.
But I mean, you can still play action, from pistol and all like that.
Yeah, I haven't run pistol Ben's got to break his foot for them to run pistol, apparently, which I would love to have him run pistol. Mike Munchak said they wanted to run pistol. I think it's a good way to mesh things, but they don't do it.
But you can even do it out of the full shotgun there with a sidecar,
Sure.
But they just don't do it for one reason or the other. And it would be interesting to hear either Ben have to answer it, well, really both of them on the same day. That way one can't prepare for the question.
Okay, I don't know if they're that.
But you get where I'm going. It's just something that we seem to to talk about the last 3 seasons when it comes to Ben and play action, and nobody asked a question about it and all.
No,
So
I agree.
So that's one area there, and then obviously forcing the football at times. When you go back and you look at his what do you have, 16 interceptions last year? I think 10 of those were with AB targeted. Now, obviously, with AB being your primary guy like that, it's probably not out of the ordinary, or obviously it would be what you would expect. Your highest targeted receiver to have the most interceptions there, but it just felt like Ben kind of forced the ball at times to AB, and I think you'll see a little bit less of him forcing the ball to a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster this year, and on. So, what did I miss on Ben? What would you like to see Roethlisberger do better in 2019?
The only thing I would add, and it's kind of an offshoot of what you were saying, was just red zone responsibility, where he led the league in red zone interceptions last year. You talk about the Denver game, obviously how that turned out. What was it, the Atlanta game or the Tampa game, where there was I think it was Atlanta, where they just threw a really lame duck, excuse me. It wasn't like he just threw it straight up into the air and like quadruple coverage for AB, and it easily got picked. I mean, there were just some of his worst plays last year came in the red zone. So just clean those up, give your chance to get in the end zone or at least settle for 3. The red zone interceptions were a real problem last year.
Yeah, I think he had 5 or 6 in, or let's see.
I think it was five or 6. Yeah.
Right. In the red zone, and 8 or 9 on the opponent's side of the 50-yard line or something like that. So yeah, definitely. I mean, look, if you clean up those interceptions by half, and that make a huge difference, obviously, and especially if this team only has if this defense only records under 20 turnovers. Oh, man, that's going to be a lot. And the special teams don't do what they're supposed to do. There's going to be a lot more long fields for this offense to have to navigate. So, obviously, going back to the Mike Clay projections here, he has Juju with 151 total targets and 103 receptions. I think you can get away with a great season with Juju not having 100 receptions. To me, that feels a little high.
You think that's high? So he had over 100 last year in 14.
Yeah, it feels a little high with the down to with kind of me hoping that Roethlisberger doesn't have to throw near the amounts that he threw last year, and being able to kind of spread the some of the stuff out, losing AB around to the other receivers there. To me, I mean, look, I won't be surprised if it comes in right on those numbers, but to me it just feels a tad high. Obviously, the touchdowns, the 9, you would think could be there. Maybe a few less yards, maybe a few less receptions, but obviously Juju should be 90 plus receptions.
Oh yeah, at least 90. I think he'll hit 100 again. I think he could have a very similar season to last year. I think they'll throw a little bit less, but with AB gone, it's gonna obviously put Juju as the focal point of this offense. So I think he probably comes in around last year where he had a little over 100 for 1,400 yards, and the 9 touchdowns are fine by me.
He's got Dante Moncrief, 53 receptions for 708 yards and 5 touchdowns. Would you sign up for that right now?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I would too. He's got James Washington, 45 receptions, 630 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Would you sign up for that right now?
Pen to paper, I would.
Absolutely, I would too as well too. He's got Deontay Johnson, 28 receptions, 354 yards, and a touchdown. Would you sign up for that right now?
Yeah, I'm really cool with most of the receiver projections that he had. I think those ones he was pretty solid with.
The one I take issue with, and I think a lot of people probably would, Ryan Switzer, 5 receptions, 41 yards.
Yeah, that's why I said most, because Switzer, I think, is going to have more than that.
He can have that in a game.
I mean, he did have that in a game with the Jacksonville game. I mean, I guess you could argue is he going to make the team in roles. I mean, there's a lot of receivers yet there, but just with injuries over the course of the season, I know that's not necessarily being projected here, but we know he's going to have more than that. And how about Eli Rogers having 6 carries? I don't know where that's coming from, but that's interesting.
Makes you kind of feel like maybe he got Eli and Ryan Switzer mixed up.
It really did, yeah. Switzer's, if anyone's carrying the ball at receiver, it's Deontay Johnson and Ryan Switzer, not Eli Rogers.
I could see Switzer getting 10 carries throughout the season if he makes the team, because, I mean, especially, look, they did that. They did 5 wide receivers on the field, right?
Yeah, I think they're going to use 4 receiver sets, especially with maybe some lack of depth at tight end. And I know that we'll get into some of the 2 running back stuff. But when you draft Deontay Johnson, you bring in Moncrief, you want to see Washington, what he can do. I mean, not that they're going to run it all the time, but they're going to run some 4 receiver sets. I really believe that.
Kind of feels like a game show here, but Vance McDonald, would you take 56 for 658 and 5 touchdowns right now?
Can I buy a vowel? Yeah, no, I would take that. Yeah, I think that's just if I'll take the 15 games. It's the number I think I'll take in that projection, and everything else is gravy.
Absolutely, there. Grimble, he's got Gentry with 4 receptions, 45 yards there. Overall, I mean, I don't think he did a bad job. I mean, even if you look at the running backs, 59 receptions for almost 500 yards for Connor. He's got Samuel's 26 catches for 200 yards. Man, I don't think he did a bad job at kind of distributing out these receptions and yards and touchdowns here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, like you said, how tough it is, even if there is some algorithm or some statistical model here to project an entire team for the entire league. I mean, I couldn't do it, but he's got Boswell with a bounce-back year, Barry with a better year. I guess the biggest thing Steelers fans would take exception with is his projected wins is only 8.9, which I guess is kind of on the high side for this model, but obviously a 9-win season isn't what you want as a Steelers fan.
Say that again on 8 point being high on the. What do you mean
on
the model?
It says projected wins 8.9, and then it says NFL ranked 12, which feels a little on the high side. So I don't know if teams kind of if the win projections across the board are a little bit down based on this model. I mean, to be a 9-win team and have, I guess, a 12th most wins, I don't know. It felt a little low.
Well, he's got, this kind of matches the model as far as the early lines go. Obviously, he doesn't like the Steelers' probability of beating the Patriots in Week 1. The San Francisco game, the Steelers only have a 54% win probability in that game, and if you look at the early line release on that, that's a pick'em game, I think, out there against San Francisco. Obviously, the Steelers are not favored right now against the Chargers in Week 6. Believe it or not, they are favored against Indianapolis at home, and he only gives the Steelers a 49% chance to win that one. The Rams is a pick'em game as well, too, I believe, and that game he only gives the Steelers a 40% chance of winning. And then the first of the 2 Browns games, he only gives the Steelers a 40% chance. But it could be interesting to see this Browns team sure is getting a lot of hype, and I get it. To some degree, but still, this is a Browns team that, they're celebrating a 9-win season last year, which, I guess it was 9, right?
No, it was. Didn't they go 7?
Seven. Celebrating a 7-win season last year, you won the Super Bowl, and you got a second-year quarterback in Baker Mayfield, and you hear all the time Ben Roethlisberger when asked, not that it's the end-all, do-all, when asked about these quarterbacks coming off of rookie season, he always says, let's see how they do in their second year.
Well, Ben's second year was pretty okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's few and far between. I mean, it really is what kind of separates some of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a changing of the guard. I expect Baker to have a really strong season. I don't know about you, but I don't think.
No, I think he is too. But I mean, I think their defense is getting a little bit overrated.
Well, I was saying I don't think defenses are going to magically figure Baker Mayfield out. Now, their defense may have some issues, but that front is really strong. You have a good front. I mean, you'll be okay, especially if they sign Gerald McCoy. If they can swing him.
But anyway, so, Cleveland's obviously supposed to give the Steelers some probs here this year. But 8.9, boy, if this team only wins 9, if the 2019 Steelers only win 9 games, going to be very disappointing.
Yep, and that was my overall point, was that certainly you're looking for at least a 10-win season. Obviously, you want to win the AFC North. You kind of, however you can do it. If that takes 9 wins, it'll probably take more than 9 wins. But win the North, but I think it'll take at least 10 wins.
Let me tell you, you go back to those defensive projections again. If they only get 43 sacks and 11 interceptions, they're probably only going to be a 9-win team.
Yeah, no, hard to disagree with that. They got to be around the 50-sack mark again, I believe. And, of course, the interceptions have to really get double, I think, from last year to go from 8 to 16.
All right, we spent entirely too much time on that, but what else were we going to talk about today?
Yeah, not a whole lot, but we'll transition. We'll talk about some of the 2 running back stuff. I think there was a report from the Post-Gazette that you're getting some 2-back looks with Connor and Samuel lined up in the backfield, or one split out, one in the backfield. And this isn't anything new. I kind of almost chalk this up to, at this point, Dave, just off-season fodder, where it feels like every single spring we're talking about some 2 running back stuff, some pony backfield. And yeah, you may see it a little bit this year, especially without, obviously, post-AB. But I think it's something that probably ends up having more bark than bite.
Yeah, and people have taken issue with me saying that in the past. In fact, I got a nasty email where we'll read a little bit later on in this show around that subject. But once again, look, I mean, I understand the excitement about it. I understand why people might like to see such and why they're practicing it. But all that said, how many times realistically, barring multiple injuries, are we going to see either or, Jaylen Samuels along with Connor or along with Snell in the same backfield? And, I just can't see it. I mean, what's the over-under on that number, 20?
I might take the under, put it at 20. I mean, I'd have to go back. How many times I did do it with D. Will and Bell a couple years ago?
Not
Probably about the same. Not many, yeah. So, again, you could see it. Obviously, Samuels offers something unique in terms of what he does as a receiver and his background. But, you have one less blocker. Are you going to get the right matchup? I mean, do you want to keep your receivers on the field? So it's just hard to envision in practice how it's going to work consistently.
And, and I guess this is one thing we didn't talk about. I guess this had happened Friday night, too. What did you think about let's go. Let's transition into what Joey Porter actually said about the Steelers in a two-back set here. He says, I think it's all about matchups. I think them putting the two backs back there and taking a fullback Roosevelt Nix off the field, it gives you some options. Because, if I give the ball to James Conner, he can run the ball. If I give it to Samuels, they're both runners, right? Samuels is better out of the backfield as far as catching the ball. And, if you have Conner down at the fullback, you have to respect it. I mean, so then they put two backs back there and they start motioning. It's going to create some diversion. I think it's something they definitely think they could be good at. They'll use it in the right way that break down some defenses and give them some other people to stay up late trying to figure out and what they're doing. But it's going to help them in the long run. To me, that's a lot of words for Joey Porter to say. I'm not really sure how they're going to use it.
Yeah, a lot of words, Sal. He's talking about Connor at fullback and Nix coming off the field. Did Joey Porter coach for the Steelers last year? How much did Rosie Nix play last year? Connor at fullback, I'm not sure what he's getting at with that one.
And really, I give more credence to what Terrell Davis had to say about it, about the possibility of it. He says, listen, when Samuels had a stretch last year, he had a 2-game stretch that was decent. I mean, it was pretty good. And James Conner is solid, but none of these guys are like dynamic running backs. They're not like no Alvin Kamara, for example. If you got Alvin Kamara back there, he's in the backfield with Mark Ingram or with James Conner, then I might say, okay, you got something going on. You might have something going on there, but I don't see it. And then he goes on to say, and this is nothing new. They had the halfback. They've had halfbacks when I played in Denver. We had two halfbacks in the backfield. We were interchangeable. You don't remember Aaron Craver, do you?
No, afraid not.
It's short timer there in Denver. We both, Aaron Craver was a halfback, but he was labeled as a fullback. He would run and I would block and we'd switch. So we've seen it, and you can create some matchups that work, but I don't see this being as such a great kind of combination that's going to revolutionize the Pittsburgh Steelers with those two guys in the backfield. So I tend to go more of a TD there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, a little bit, but that's a good point. I mean, Samuels does offer something unique as a receiver, but he's certainly not a dynamic player in space. And I think generally if you want that pony look to work, you want someone dynamic in space. And Samuels isn't quite that guy, unless he's totally transforms his body heading into year 2.
All right, what did you think about some of the other things Joey Porter had to say about Ben Roethlisberger? And look, I thought he was spot. You could obviously tell he's a Devin Bush fan. And he knows his dad, and obviously they had Devin Bush Sr. as a coaching intern last year during training camp and all, and yep. You could tell Porter. You could tell that Porter was involved in some discussions with Devin Bush way before probably his last season at Michigan got underway there. So not surprising at all that he thinks Devin Bush can put the nasty. Was the word that he used back in the Steelers defense, and really it wasn't surprising to hear Porter say that we tried to use multiple players to create a Ryan Shazier last year, and that didn't work.
Yeah, I mean you can't do that. You got to have one chazier, one consistent guy, and they didn't have that last year. So yeah, I thought his comments on Bush were good. I think they pretty much echo everything that we've talked about, and most of what the national media believes of what he can do, what he can bring, be that every down guy, be that dynamic playmaker. I wrote an article on it yesterday, kind of talking about how Devin Bush fits into the Steelers defense, which I think is still sticky on Steelers Depot. So yeah, I mean it's nothing new, but I agree with what Porter said.
And what do you think about all of his about the long words that he long use or long paragraphs of his on Roethlisberger? Did it feel more bitterness in there, or?
Yeah, maybe a little. I don't know. I hate litigating this thing over and over again. I don't think he's saying anything that really hasn't been said. I know that he brings a different perspective, being that he was in the locker room the last couple of years, but I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot of new information there. He just thought Ben could have done a better job, which I'm sure is true, and I kind of just roll past it at this point.
Went into Friday night thinking, it's going to be a nice, quiet night. Then Joey Porter happened.
Oh, you were happy.
Gave us something to write about Friday night there. Okay, what else did we miss here?
I wrote an article courtesy of some great information from Steven Ruiz the other day, talking about how the Steelers are terrible versus empty sets. And to be honest, I'm surprised they actually came in as high, quote unquote, high as they did. Finished 24th, the Steelers defense did in defending empty sets. Played a lot of cover one against it. But this is a problem that you and I have talked about endlessly last year. The Steelers not having good response against five wide and motions and shifts, and obviously getting linebackers on receivers and getting some really terrible matchups, and just in general having very little success. And I get that it's difficult to play versus empty. It's not something where defenses are generally going to thrive, but the Steelers were terrible at it last year, and they just have not shown me that they can formulate a good response to it. Yeah,
they absolutely have to get better in those kind of situations there, and that's why you would think and hope that maybe a guy like Bush is able to get himself on the field sooner rather than later. You know?
But even beyond that, just the matchups alone, like you can't put Devin Bush on Keenan Allen this year and expect results. I mean, Bush might be better than Bostic, but it's not going to work.
Right, but it's all about scheming. It's all about trying to get the matchups you can in certain situations.
Yeah, and that's where Marcus Allen's going to come in big, because assuming he's going to play that big-time role as a dime defender, that's someone that you're going to need out there, against some passing situations. And obviously, teams don't have to be literally five wide to go empty, and that can be tough to project when they're going to do it. But you're going to get a good taste week one against New England. I mean, you're going to find out right away if they've made the changes or not.
Well, you're a lot higher, I think, on Marcus Allen than I am heading into this.
I'm not. I'm nervous that they're putting basically all their eggs in his basket, but I recognize that he's the guy. I mean, who else is that guy for that to take over Burnett's spot?
I just, maybe they use less dime.
I agree they could use less dime, but they're still going to use a lot of dime. When it's 3rd and 5+, what are they running this year? They're running dime.
Okay.
I mean, it's what they've done the last 3 years.
It'd be interesting to see if anybody else can step up.
I mean, who? I mean,
it would have to be an undrafted free agent at this point. You would think.
And that's a tall task. So again, it's not that I'm loving Marcus Allen over here. I was the one who thought they were going to take a safety. Give me Darnell Savage. Give me Redwine. I mean, I was surprised as anybody that they did not address the safety position. But Tomlin, asked about it, and who's the first name he points to when talking about sub-package football? It's Marcus Allen. So I'm just reading the tea leaves over here.
All right, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and now that we're in week 2 of OTAs, I don't know. When did the coaches speak? Is that during mandatory minicamp when we next hear from the position coaches?
I think so, but I don't remember.
Because I have a feeling we're not going to get as much information in the final 2 weeks of OTA practices that we got. Not that we got a lot of information, period. I mean, it's hard to read some of these things coming off of just quotes, and obviously there's a lot of hyperbole mixed in on top of it there. But definitely something to be to pay attention to on this possible dime defender here moving forward.
I think the only things we had left before we get to some reader emails to some of the Patriots news, I guess. This is kind of the Patriots portion of the podcast. Just one note, Ben Watson, the tight end, came out of retirement, signed back with the Patriots after starting his career there. Suspended for the first 4 weeks of the season, so the Steelers will not see him week 1, so that's a little bit of good news there. Anything to add with that, Dave? Just kind of a minor note.
Yeah, boy, we talk about how the Steelers could use another tight end. Good thing they have a waiver wire priority over the Patriots from here on out, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they let a tight end worth any type of salt get put on the waiver wire and claimed by the ultimately claimed or signed by the Patriots, shame on them.
Yeah, well, the Patriots will just find some janitor to catch 7 touchdowns this year.
But what do you think of the Steelers' tight end depth chart right now compared to the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, it does look better because I don't even know who the Patriots' number 1 is. Is it Safarian-Jenkins? Like, I don't know their situation too clearly. And obviously, Steelers have depth issues, but they have a really good ones at the top in Vance McDonald. So, yeah, I mean, it's better than New England, but again, New England, their ability to scheme and having the quarterback play, I mean, that cures some of the problems that they're going to have.
Yeah, if you look at them, including Benjamin Watson, they have Austin Safarian-Jenkins, Matt LaCosse, who's caught a few passes in the league, as has Steven Anderson, he was with the Texans, wasn't he?
Yep.
And then Ryan Izzo and Andrew Beck, and Andrew Beck was signed as a rookie undrafted free agent. And that's it on their tight end depth chart right now. So I got a feeling that between now and the start of the regular season, and look, nothing against Benjamin Watson, but was he a slam dunk to make their 53 anyway?
I think he was, considering they knew about the suspension. Yeah, I think that he was.
He's damn 38 years old.
I know. He's father time, but
if you don't have him for the first, I suppose it doesn't. I haven't looked back to see what his contract is, but I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't feel on the surface as that big of a loss for Week 1.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be fine either way. Watch out for Andrew Beck though. I think that was their highest UDFA. And I feel like he's going to catch a touchdown against the Steelers Week 1. It's kind of one of those games.
You're pointing to the fence already on that.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to point to the fence, and I'll probably strike out. But, hey, that's all right.
All right, what else do we have?
The other thing was your close personal friend, Willie McGinnis, talking again. It was on NFL Network the other day, talking about how the Steelers will not be, no way they can be a top 5 offense in 2019.
I get his overall message, which is no way they can be a top 5 offense. But once he gets into the details, he seems to go off the track here. And why in the hell does he initially go? His first response, absolutely not. When asked if the Steelers can have a top 5 offense in 2019 without Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. And I think they're still a good offense, but maybe a top 10, top 20. Boy, top 10 to top 20 is quite a rate. Mm-hmm. Not like we're dealing with 70 here.
Right, right.
But he goes, but maybe a top 10, maybe a top 20. Boy, I wish I could have ranges like that to potentially miss in. Yeah. But he goes on to say, but not a top 5. And you mentioned AB, you mentioned Lev Bell. What's important about that is the last time they were on the field, 50% of their touchdowns went through AB and Le'Veon Bell. Why in the hell are you bringing up 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know about that.
And yeah, they were just under 50%. Or right at around 50% of total touchdowns when those two were on the field a couple years ago. But, I mean, that's a couple of years ago. And then he goes on to say, he talks about absolutely, let's see. So now, okay, Juju, you're the number 1 guy. We all understand that. But if I'm a defense coordinator and I'm game planning against the Steelers, I'm double teaming Juju and I'm loading the box. Look, I said that same thing just recently, talking about the Patriots and the Steelers in Week 1. I'm not going to let Juju beat me. And in essence, Willie said the same thing on Thursday or whenever he said. He says, I want to see who's going to beat me. Who's on the outside? Is it Eli Rogers? Is it Ryan Switzer? Who is it? Is it James Conner? James Washington? Okay, but he's still young. He's going into his second year. So if I'm game planning and you're looking at the production those two guys had that walked out the door, now, and once again, he goes back to Bell. I think Bell really should be thrown out of the equation here based on what James Conner was able to do last year. Not that even still James Conner is Le'Veon Bell, but I mean, he still put up some pretty good production when he was healthy. James Conner. Two guys had walked out the door. Now teams and defenses are going to game plan a little bit different. How are you going to generate those explosive plays when you take away the number one guy, which right now is Juju. I get all that, and I think that's the biggest question maybe when it comes to this Steelers team in 2019 is how are you going to produce those larger amount of explosive plays?
Yeah, I don't think his overall point is wrong. I think talking in absolutes about what they will or won't be is kind of foolish. But I mean, I get the idea. But I mean, that's a point that I think everybody can make. Everyone knows that the struggles that they're going to have replacing AB and trying to get consistent production and double teams and the attention Juju's going to draw. I mean, none of that is news to you or I.
And I think he's sleeping a little bit on James Conner as well.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone's always slept on James Conner. The dude always just produces. He's just got to stay healthy. He's got to cut down the fumbles. He's got to stay healthy. Those are the issues.
Right. Now, like I said, I don't take issue with his overall message. I just think he just delivered it poorly when it comes to McGinnis. I mean,
par for the course.
I mean, do you expect him to have a top 5 offense? And I guess it gets into what most constitutes a top 5 offense. I guess if you take the main 15 statistical categories that are ranked week in, week out by the NFL, then find an average of those, which last year the Steelers, believe it or not, were like top 5. Where were they? I don't have it in front of me here.
I don't know. I would just use points per game. I thought that's kind of what he was saying, was just a top 5 offense in terms of points per game. That's the ultimate number.
And points per game, you would think might be down this year, right?
Yeah, and everyone, the numbers are jumping up when you have teams like Kansas City putting up 50. I mean, yeah, they'll probably finish around 9th or 10th. The red zone offense, they got to continue to have the really strong red zone offense production. If they can do that, they'll be a 7 to 8. If they take a step back, they might fall out of the top 10.
I think the biggest key, and I've said it for a while now, when it comes to this 2019 Steelers team is the defense has got to be better. If the defense can make the improvements and get the turnovers and become a quote-unquote top 10 defense, however you want to term that, through whatever statistical measure, then the byproduct of that will be Ben and company probably not having to play on as many longer fields as they did last year. And obviously, if you get more out of the special teams unit than you got last year, that will go a long way in helping this 2019 team as well too. But I mean, realistically, it's not. There's nothing wrong with saying that the Steelers' offense might take a small step backwards statistically. As far as total yards per game and those kind of things, total points scored in 2019.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely take a step back. I mean, and I know that we all know and understand the loss of AB, but I don't think you'll really feel it until you don't have it the way it was last year in Week 17 against the Bengals, where it's like, dang, how you got to really get creative. Guys really have to step up because it's going to be even more difficult than I think what Steeler fans imagine. And
look, you can still win, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, I'm not saying they can't win, but it's going to be a different look.
Hey, here's something coming out of Willie's comments too that I want to kind of touch on. A quick glance at the New Orleans Saints. I mean, you consider the Saints offense top 5 last year, right?
Yeah, I imagine statistically they were.
All right. Quick glance at the Saints' individual stats from last season. If you look at it, they were indeed probably a top 5 unit by anybody's standards, and they only had one wide receiver with more than 28 total receptions and more than 427 receiving yards last year. And that was, of course, Michael Thomas, who registered 125 total receptions for a little over 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. The Saints' second best wide receiver last year was Traquan Smith, 2018 third-round draft pick, and he registered just 28 receptions for 427 yards, but he did have the 5 touchdowns last year. Now, the thing that made that offense better, obviously, was they didn't turn the football over much. They had just 16 offensive giveaways all last season. And by the way, the Saints had the best average ranking of the 15 main statistical categories last season that I just talked about, and they finished just barely ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. So technically, I mean, if you use that measure they had the best offense last year, and they did kind of have a 1-2 running back punch in Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. You don't. What else did they do good offensively, Alex?
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that the difference between, what the Steelers have and what the Saints have, to kind of go back to the discussion we had briefly earlier, was who was their number 2 receiver last year. Not in name, but in production was Alvin Kamara. He caught 80 passes for 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's kind of like receiver 2 production. The average isn't going to be the same. But, so that you can look at the receiver numbers and say, yeah, that was 125 with Thomas, like 27 with the next guy, but I consider Kamara the number 2 receiver on that team, and those are the numbers I'll look at.
All right, now when you combine Jaylen and Connor for 2019, what can those two combine to have reception-wise?
I'd have to look at the numbers last year. They can probably be around those numbers Kamara put up, but it's not even just the numbers. It's just how dynamic Kamara is, the mismatches you create, what you can do with him in space, and the threat that he always, is. So it's not even just the numbers. It's just the talent that's a unique challenge for defenses.
The thing that surprised me the most about James Conner before he went down injured last year was his yards per reception for a running back was not bad at all.
Yeah, for a while he was better than AB. Like the first month of the season, I think he had a better average than Antonio Brown. But again, it's not just the numbers. We know, who's the better receiving back, James Conner or Alvin Kamara. It's Kamara, and it's not even close, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so that's the point I'm trying to make.
So, but I mean, even so, Connor still produced, was able to produce some explosive plays that way as well too. So.
Oh, he did, yeah, for sure. But it's just not the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. So. I think that's everything we had. One quick note I did want to have, because it just came in the news, not that this is anything concrete, but according to Mary Kay Cabot from the Cleveland beat writer, says Gerald McCoy is going to arrive at Baltimore Ravens facility later today for a visit. So you got the Browns, you got the Ravens. I think even the Bengals have shown interest. I mean, it's the AFC North minus Pittsburgh looking at Gerald McCoy.
Yeah, probably going to land in one of those 3 teams.
McCoy would be a weird fit, but I don't need to deal with McCoy and Michael Pierce and Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams, is that his name? Who's the big nose tackle?
Brandon Williams, yeah.
Is it Brandon Williams? Okay, yeah. So yeah. So let's hope McCoy goes somewhere outside of the AFC North.
All right, shall we get to the email machine?
Yep, let's do it.
Russ Obenstein writes in, "Hi, Dave and Alex. Do you guys find it amusing, as I do, that media says Ben's apology to AB is too late, but they failed to mention that he tried to reach out to AB constantly at the end of the season, but AB would not respond? But to my main topic, were you guys as impressed with how players responded in their interviews to OTAs as I was? And do you sense, as I do, that the chemistry seems to be stronger than ever, and they really seem to be focused and have determination in them to prove all the doubters to finally put together another Super Bowl winning season? I certainly do, and I feel they show on the field teamwork and are going to get number 7 this year. And as I always tell you guys, you are the best. Thanks, Russ Obenstein. Russ, appreciate the email. Look, the whole Ben saying that he tried, I mean, that's a he said, she said thing anyway, right? I mean, I
imagine it's true. I imagine he reached out and maybe didn't respond.
I do too, but to what degree and how quickly? I don't know. Yeah, Joey Porter did leave that out, and really, isn't it Joey Porter the only one? I suppose maybe there's a few out of these knuckleheads out there, the Stephen A. Smiths or whatever, saying that maybe Ben's apology was too late. It just seems like an easy narrative to run with, right?
I mean, my favorite was, I think it was Adam Sheen on NFL.com was talking about Ben and was like, and Ben Roethlisberger keeps talking about Antonio Brown again. And I'm like, what? It's the first time he's talked about him all offseason. He did say, he literally wrote that. He said Ben keeps talking about him. And I'm like, what?
Sometimes I wonder which one of these knuckleheads are the worst, and you don't hear from one for a while, and then you go, oh, and Adam Shine is absolutely, he is absolutely the worst. Impressed as far as how they responded to. Look, I mean, you would expect them to maybe respond the way that they've responded, and you would think and hope maybe the chemistry is a little bit stronger, and it's all optics right now. I mean, we could probably read into it what we want to read into it, but I mean, it does seem, and I think I mentioned this on a show or two ago, it just seems like there's a little bit different air this offseason than there, at this time of the offseason than there was last offseason.
No, I agree. Probably a little less tension, but we'll see how things go when regular season starts and it really ramps up. But just stop doing stupid stuff on Twitter. That's all I ask for. I'm not asking for much from the Steelers players over here.
Yeah, and look, now that Ben, like I've said, now that Ben has said what he's had to say, that's enough.
Yep, drop it. Move on.
Move on to the next topic there. All right, I got a bit of a nasty one in here.
Just one?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to.
But you had a folder for that. For Dave's nasty emails.
My name is Dustin Webster, but you may know me better as Slammed Uncle on Twitter. That is a Twitter handle that you have blocked. The reason for blocking me last year's training camp, he says, because I had an audacity to suggest that the Steelers may utilize a two-back set. And now, alas, you're cranking out articles discussing that very idea. Let's see. What else? Well, let's see. Anyway, that's his main argument here was that, and I went back and found his Twitter post here and what it was in response to. Hold on just a minute here, and I'll read it to you here.
I'm along for the ride on this one. I'm just gonna
because I'm actually right on this one, and let's see. This all stems from a post that I had on November 5th of last season, midway through the season when all that talk about Le'Veon Bell might be back and yada, yada, yada. I put in all capital letters here. I was mad. I put, no, we are not going to see Bell and Connor both on the field together for very many snaps at all, if any, when the former shows up next week. The Steelers already had a pretty good slot wide receiver, and maybe you have heard of him. His name is Juju Smith-Schuster. And then this guy goes on to say, you ever hear of a two-back set? And anyways, so he goes on to tell me, so you're telling me that you would rather have on the field Switzer, Washington, Hunter, even if the ball doesn't go to Bell. It's another assignment defenses have to study on film. The offense is better with him on the field. That doesn't change because your fanhood is hurt. I'm not sure what Dustin meant by that. Alex, even though Bell did not come back last year, we had heard all the things that possibly, James Conner and Jaylen Samuels on the field. How many times last year did the Steelers have a personnel grouping with James Conner and Jaylen Samuels on the field at the same time?
I'm going to be bold here now. Maybe it happened one time?
0.
Was it 0? Okay, I wasn't sure if they did one random third down.
0. 0.000000. Now I know that's not Bell and Connor. Boy, you hear a little bit of feedback there still. But anyway, and now Dustin says we're cranking out the articles talking about two-back sets. We're cranking out what people are saying about the two-back sets. And I think you heard. I'm guessing Dustin still listens to this podcast. And Dustin, I don't know why you're saying you're blocked on Twitter. I'm showing you as being unblocked on Twitter. But anyway. Honestly, Alex, how many times, we talked about earlier in the show, how many times do we expect to see James Conner and Jaylen Samuels or Benny Snell and Jaylen Samuels or Benny Snell and James Conner on the field together at the same time? If I like I said, if we put a snap count of 20 over and under as far as how many times those guys are on the field together, you're going under, and so am I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, like I said, it's all bark, not much of a bite.
I mean, if they hit 10, would you be surprised?
A little bit.
I mean, even if they hit 10, is it some glorious thing that, look there, I told you they're going to get two running backs on the field at the same time? You would think that maybe they would do it more than 0 this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it'll be maybe a game plan specific, or it's just one matchup they want to take advantage of against one team, and it's not something you're probably going to see once or twice every single week. You might see it 5 times in one game, 5 times in another game.
So Dustin, you spent this time sending me this email. Where am I wrong? Where are we wrong here? Reach back out to me. I mean, at some point, yeah, they're going to probably put 2 running backs on the field together. But we've been kind of hearing the same thing since Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams were on the roster and all as well too. So look, I hate to have to fight back on certain situations like that, but that's where we're at. Let's see, what else do we have here? Jeff. Jeff wrote about William Jackson. He saw that the Bengals picked up William Jackson's 5th-year option. Why didn't his contract toll since he missed his entire first year to the pec injury? In other words, why aren't they getting an extra year with him before needing to pick up his 5th-year option? Because isn't he technically only in his 3rd year? He goes on to say, I remember them fighting with A.J. McCarron over the same thing, and he only missed half a year. A.J. was the second rounder, so maybe different, but I was curious to know. And I've since had a couple back and forths with Jeff on this to explain it to him, so I might as well explain to the rest of the listeners as well too. The thing with the contract tolling with players, that happens in the final year of their contract when they're on the reserve. If they miss it due to injury on say the PUP list. Okay, so if a player, spends the entire final year of his contract, a la Mike Adams, a la Eli Rogers last year, that's when a contract tolls in the final year there. Now the thing with William Jackson, his pec injury happened during his rookie season. So the thing there was the fact that but he was on the IR all season and all, or he did. When did he go on? Do you remember when? I'm forgetting.
I don't know. Yeah.
When he did that, I think it was early on during the offseason. But anyway, to his argument about the whole McCarron thing, that fight with A.J. McCarron was over whether or not he was going to be a restricted or an unrestricted free agent. Here's what I wrote back to Jeff here verbatim. The thing with McCarron was the fight over if he had gained enough accrued seasons to become an unrestricted free agent, being as how he had spent most of his rookie season on the team's what they call the NFI list, the non-football injury list, because that's technically how McCarron was injured initially. The Bengals argued that after his 4th season that McCarron should have been a restricted free agent and not an unrestricted free agent. McCarron filed a grievance arguing that the Bengals should have activated him from the NFI list during training camp in 2014, his rookie season. Instead, the Bengals kept him on the NFI list with a shoulder injury and didn't activate him until December 9th, and he wasn't credited for his service time needed for an accrued season there. 6 regular season games are needed for a player to get an accrued season there. So all that fight, and going back to William Jackson, obviously the league had a decision to make it with McCarron, but that's why you're not seeing those guys' contract tolls. Remember that it comes in a final year of a season, and generally contract tolling is related to a player spending most of the time on the PUP list. And last year with Eli Rogers, the thing was he was not ready to go by the 6th week of the season. Okay, physically. Now, he could have probably filed a grievance if he had felt that he was healthy enough to be activated within that time. Obviously, he still wasn't with that knee injury and all of his. So that's where that answers Jeff's question. Hopefully it clears up a few things for other people about how contract tolling works there. Let's see, one other one from Russell Williams here. I surmise, multiple views that Sutton's receiving is the Steelers' effort to make him practice squad eligible. It doesn't make a lot of sense. He surmises the multiple views that Sutton's receiving is the Steelers' effort to make him practice squad eligible, the more hats theory. Do you get that with Sutton Smith?
Well, I think he's trying to say, why are the Steelers talking about moving Cameron Sutton around so much? I don't think it's anything to do with being practice squad eligible. I think it's just trying to increase his value to the 53 because he doesn't have a defined spot as a starter, and even as a backup, it gets a little murky. So I think it's just trying to maximize ways to potentially get him on the field to help out depth at, say, free safety at slot corner, outside corner, but he's not going to go to the practice squad.
Yeah, I think way too much is being made out of this already.
I think Cam Sutton should be the backup free safety. I'll just say it. I think
Oh,
they
I
should
no,
really
I thought he was talking about Sutton Smith.
Well, was it Sutton Smith or Cameron Sutton? I heard Sutton.
I think he was talking about Sutton Smith.
Maybe it was Sutton. I guess that would make more sense talking about practice squad. No, if it's Sutton Smith, I mean, I agree. It's probably
it
more being.
It is Sutton Smith.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was kind of weirdly worded. I agree that's probably being made too much out of the whole situation with him going to fullback for a day. But again, as I said, I mean, I'm happy about it. I'm encouraged by it. Let's find ways to get him on the field, maximize his value. It's the same principle as I talked about with Cam Sutton, just to a different degree. And so maybe it comes down to Gilbert versus Sutton Smith, and they say, well, Smith can offer a little bit more in special teams. He's a little more versatile. In a pinch, he can play fullback. I mean, anything you can do to help the team is going to help your odds in making the 53.
Yeah, and like I was going, I just think it's people reading way too much into this Sutton Smith stuff early on. I think it's just let's see what all we can do anyway, and then kind of go from there. I was surprised though.
Yeah, it was notable, but hey, I'm cool with it.
All right, from George Herreras, writes in, he lives in Virginia. Dave, glad to hear your vacation was a success. It's like a successful surgery, right?
Okay.
Aren't all surgeries supposed to be successful? Hopefully. Anyway, just wanted to know if you guys had a particular favorite team. Steelers team from any one season. I was around 16 years old, Ben's rookie year, and even though they didn't win it all, it always stands out to me. With me, I would think I would have to go with maybe the 79-80 Steelers, the winning the fourth Super Bowl there. Either that one or the year before that, just because let's see, I would have been 9-10 at the time, and Steelers already was a Steelers fan at that time, but of course being that age, and you're really you have all the football cards, and you know who all the players are pretty much at that point, and you're already able to boast that your team has 2 Super Bowls. And look, I grew up in Florida, and you want to talk about being king of the world, wearing your Steelers jacket and you're taking your Steelers book bag to school in the late 70s in Florida certainly didn't suck. And after winning that the fourth Super Bowl in the late 70s there against the Rams and all, I mean, I vividly, you have the recollection, and trust me, I don't have a lot of good recollections from my childhood, but that was one that really sticks out, that I can vividly remember still watching that game and the things that happened and how excited I was. So I would have to say maybe my favorite any one season of the Steelers would have to maybe be that 79-80 season when they won their fourth Super Bowl.
It's a really good question. I don't know if I have a good answer to it. Maybe the 04 season. That was pretty special, though that loss to New England was just crushing. I still remember just watching that one. I just was crying like a baby after seeing Rodney Harrison run that one back. The 76 team, I love learning about it. I'll say I didn't get to see it live, but learning about that defense and how dominant that was and stuff that you'll just almost certainly never ever see again. And then if you guys know me, I'm a big football nerd of the pre-Noel era, so any team that had Big Daddy Lipscomb and Ernie Stautner on it, I'm cool with. And then I even like learning about the very first team, 1933, with Angelo Bervelli and Mose Kelch, and Steelers in their first year ever, the Pirates, I should say. Back then, 33-40, they were the Pirates. So I love learning about those teams and how the origins of the franchise.
What's your earliest recollection of the Steelers? Do you remember?
Oh, wow. I'm trying to think. I'd have to go back and look at the year. I think there was a game against like the 49ers that they had. Well, I don't know what year that would have been. Late 90s, I guess. I think with Terrell Owens they were facing. I'd have to go back and look, but I kind of have an image of that. That's a really good question. I remember the tie against Atlanta really well, the 34-34 with Burris cashing at the 1. I do have a pretty vivid memory of that, but which I know was a little bit later. That was, what year was that? The tie against Atlanta. 2002?
Let's see. The 2000. You talking about the 2000 and I guess 3 game against the 49ers? Was that it?
It might have been earlier than that. I don't remember the year at all.
1999.
It might have been 99. They played him in 99.
Let's see. They beat San Francisco 49ers 27-6 in '99.
Yeah, but I remember the Falcons game, that tie game, which I think was 0-2, 0-1, 0-2.
Oh boy, that was the one where wasn't that the one where Price got like 200
Yeah,
something yards?
it was the one where he caught the Hail Mary at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
And that's how the game ended. I remember that one really well. I can look that one up really quick. But yeah, I guess I don't have any super early memories of it. I lived in Florida till I was 3, so I wasn't born in Pittsburgh. Not that I would have remembered anything when I was 1 year old. But so I guess it took a little bit to kind of get me becoming a Steelers fan. I wasn't necessarily born into it. But yeah, probably that Falcons game and then that random 49ers game.
Let's see that game, the tie. In fact, they tied back
Yeah,
to back.
0-2.
0-2.
Yeah.
What was that one? And the next time they played the Falcons was at or no, I'm sorry. They tied in 2002 in a game that went to overtime, and then the following game against the Falcons in 2006 was the one that they lost in overtime to the Falcons there.
Mm. And what did Burris have that day? He had 9 for 253 and 2 scores, and Ward had 11 for $139 and a touchdown.
As a matter of fact, I didn't even realize this until looking at it right now. For the 3 meetings in a row from 2002, 2006, 2010, all 3 of those games went to overtime against the Falcons.
Wow.
Three
How about
three meetings in a row.
Hmm.
Obviously, the 2010 one was that was the Mendenhall walk-off one, right?
Yeah, 50-something yards.
And yeah, I didn't realize that until I just pulled it up. 3 overtime games in a row against the Falcons from 2002 to 2010. All right, I think that's enough for this show. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're good. We'll be back on Friday, wrap up OTAs.
We'll recap what all has happened or didn't happen during the second week of OTAs. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex Kozora on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Once again, we have an ad-free version of the site. If you would like to purchase one for $25 for 1 calendar year, go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. As always, you can send us to your emails ahead of time for the Friday show. It's easier to get your email read right now during this kind of deader part of the off season. So if you have one, send it to us, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.